In the Fallout series, you'll find a diverse range of factions, each with its own ideology, goals, and impact on the post-apocalyptic world. The Brotherhood of Steel is a technologically advanced militaristic group dedicated to preserving and controlling pre-war technology. The Enclave, remnants of the pre-war US government, seeking to reclaim America through authoritarian rule. The New California Republic strives to restore democracy and order, often struggling with corruption and overexpansion. Caesar's Legion is a brutal slaver empire inspired by ancient Rome, prioritizing order through extreme discipline. And the Institute secretly advances humanity through synthetic life forms, often at the cost of ethical considerations, plus many smaller factions scattered throughout the games and the lore. So that's what we're gonna do. Dive into each faction in Fallout, small and large, uncover their secrets, and give you a better look into these insane groups. In this video, we'll focus on Caesar's Legion, and they're a doozy. Consider subbing so you don't miss out on future faction and Fallout videos. Enjoy.
Let's start at the beginning, with a man named Edward Sallow. Edward Sallow was born in 2226, and his story starts near the Boneyard in the New California Republic. His early life wasn't easy. When he was just 2 years old, his father was killed by raiders. His mother, looking for safety, turned to the followers of the apocalypse for help. She worked at the Boneyard Library as a cook and cleaner, and that's where young Edward got his first real education. He learned to read and even took free courses, which would later shape his path in a big way. Fast forward to adulthood, Sallow became an anthropologist and linguist. At 20, he was sent east to the Grand Canyon on an expedition. Along with a physician named Bill, his mission was to study and understand the dialects of local tribes. There, they met Joshua Graham, a Mormon missionary who was already familiar with several tribal languages and planned to teach Sallow. But before that could happen, the group was captured by the Blackfoot tribe, who planned to ransom them off. Now, instead of panicking, Sallow quickly realized the Blackfoot tribe was in a tough spot. They were at war with 7 other tribes and completely outnumbered. Ignoring Bill's protests, he took matters into his own hands. If we talk to Canyon Runner in New Vegas, he gives us a little tidbit on the Blackfoots.
I have Blackfoot in me, the first tribe that Caesar ever led in battle, the tribe that formed the Legion. If not for him, we'd still be living in tents or shacks, scavenging for food like animals, if we were alive at all.
Using knowledge from old books, he taught the Blackfoots advanced warfare tactics. With his guidance, they started winning battles, conquering or absorbing the enemy tribes. Once he had enough forces under his control, he did something drastic. He erased their individual tribal identities and replaced them with a single, unified culture. At that moment, Edward Sallow became Caesar and formed what we now know as Caesar's Legion. From there, he wasted no time consolidating power. He sent Bill back west with a message: stay out of his way. Meanwhile, Joshua Graham stayed and became his right-hand man, his first legatus. And just like that, Sallow transformed from a curious scholar into a brutal ruler of one of the most feared factions in the Wasteland. Now, there are a lot more finer details on Caesar as a whole and his life story, but this series isn't about him as a character. It's about what he built. But I will say that we will be covering Caesar in the future and all his dirty little secrets, along with many other characters in Fallout. I just wanted to point that out because we are now focusing on the Legion as a whole.
A lot of you have seen these fear tactics and this brutality in New Vegas. People being crucified, slaves and women that carry what look like insanely heavy packs up hills, beatings, and it's not exactly paradise. But what does the Legion actually believe? I don't mean like the surface level of order and control. I mean the actual ideologies and their intent. Caesar's vision for the Legion isn't just about conquering territory. It's about creating something bigger. Something he believes will stop humanity from repeating the mistakes of the past. He sees the Wasteland as a fractured, chaotic mess, and his solution? Erase tribal identities and unify everyone under his rule. When he takes a group, their old culture is wiped away and they become part of the Legion's war machine. And he assimilated a lot of these tribes, 14 in total. We only know of 10, but Ulysses states that he conquered 87 tribes in total with 14 of those assimilated. Insane. Of course we know about the Blackfoots, the first tribe. The Fredonians were next, though we don't have a lot of information on these guys. Then we had the Hangdogs. Great name, I know. We know a little bit about them thanks to Antony, the Master of Hounds found at the fort. When Caesar's legion rolled into Denver, they ran into the Hangdogs, a tribe that, like many others, refused to bow without a fight. Unlike most though, they actually held their own for a while. But then Legate Lanius stepped in and his methods were brutal. Instead of just killing their warriors, he started burning their dogs alive. To the Hangdogs, this was more than just cruelty. Their dogs were sacred. They're spirit animals. The idea of them suffering in both life and the afterlife was too much to bear. And in the end, the tribe surrendered. Once they were absorbed into the Legion, Caesar saw potential in them. Their skills in training and taming dogs weren't wasted. He put the surviving men to work as the Legion's houndmasters. From then on, they specialized in breeding and training infamous Legion mongrels, turning them into vicious weapons of war. Even in defeat, their identity didn't completely disappear, just repurposed to serve Caesar's empire. Then we have the Hydebarks, one of the many origin stories surrounding Legate Lanius, who claims that he was once the greatest warrior of the Hydebarks, a tribe that found itself completely surrounded by Caesar's legion. Faced with certain defeat, the Hydebark chieftain chose to surrender, but Lanius wasn't having it. Enraged by what he saw as cowardice, he struck down his own leader and turned on his tribe, cutting down anyone who stood in his way. By the time the chaos ended, Lanius had personally killed 15 of his own people before he was finally taken down. In the struggle, his face was permanently maimed. When he woke up, he was face to face with Caesar himself. Rather than executing him, Caesar made an offer to join the Legion and fight under his banner. Lanius agreed, but on one condition. He wanted to wipe out the rest of the surviving men from his tribe. Caesar managed to talk him down, slightly convincing him to spare the younger boys and only kill the adult males. And with that, Lanius officially became part of the Legion. Ruthless, relentless, and loyal only to war. An actual psychopath. The other tribes assimilated were the Kaibabs, Painted Rock, Twin Mothers, who were mentioned by Ulysses.
The Twin Mothers were always about lessons. Caesar taught them the last one, though. So that's it for them.
And the rest were the Sundogs, Twisted Hares, and the Ridgers, who were the first tribe to be attacked by the Blackfoots, and Caesar used them like training dummies for his new army, killing everyone.
And not just the men, but the women and the children too.
But not everyone under his control is a true legionary. Only those who fight or serve directly under his command. To Caesar, the individual only matters as long as they contribute to the Legion, either through war or labor.
He's also got a very specific philosophy when it comes to strength. Unlike the NCR, which relies on advanced tech and strategy to win battles, Caesar believes in raw sacrifice and warrior culture. Painkillers? Weakness. Modern medicine? Largely ignored.
Makes for a powerful gift in a culture that forbids painkillers and is largely ignorant of medical science.
He sees struggle as the key to building a society that won't collapse like the old world did. Speaking of the NCR, Caesar has a serious grudge against it. He sees it as a corrupt system run by greedy Brahmin barons and landowners. A society weighed down by bureaucracy and selfish interests. In his eyes, the Legion is complete opposite. A tightly controlled empire where power is centralized, eliminating the possibility of corruption and weakness from within. This whole ideology is actually based on his interpretation of Hegelian dialectics. He sees the NCR as the thesis, the Legion as the antithesis, and believes their eventual clash will create a synthesis, a new, stronger civilization forged from both sides. To him, it's just like how the Roman Republic transformed into the Roman Empire, shedding democracy in favor of absolute rule. Whether or not that's actually true, well, that's up to history to decide. The way Caesar's Legion treats people is pretty disturbing to say the least. According to Cassandra Moore, the Legion doesn't allow women in its military at all. Instead, they're seen as nothing more than breeding stock, meant to keep the next generation of legionnaires coming.
The girl's the only one of real value, young enough to breed, not hideous to look at. What's your offer for the lot?
Jimmy, another source, puts it even more bluntly. Women are treated as a form of currency, traded and controlled like property. And if you think that's bad, their stance on relationships is just as extreme. Veronica makes a dark joke about how Legion soldiers treat each other the same way they treat their women. Meanwhile, Cass has an interesting reaction with you with a confirmed bachelor perk, saying she doesn't like soft men, and implying that they've got a bit of a Legion-like mindset. Even Major Knight, when speaking privately with you, hints that the Legion is a little more forgiving about certain friendships. Oh, and to top it all off, some NCR citizens genuinely believe the Legion practices cannibalism. Whether that's just wartime propaganda or a horrifying truth, well, no one really wants to find out firsthand.
As far as everyone else goes, if you're not part of the Legion or living under their rule, you're seen as worthless. The Legion refers to outsiders as dissolute or profligates, basically calling them immoral and weak. And if you're unlucky enough to be captured, you don't even get to keep your name. Freshly taken prisoners, known as captures, are stripped of their identity. They're given a new name and forced to wear rags marked with a bright red X across the chest. Slavery is a huge part of how the Legion operates, and they don't just throw people into chains without a system in place. Some slaves are even fitted with collars to keep them in line. The whole operation is run by an official known as this. I'm not even going to try to pronounce that. I already get roasted by you guys as much as it is. This guy works through representatives and administrators, handling everything from bargaining to issuing official documents like bills of sale. In the Legion, slavery isn't just common, it's an institution. The Legion isn't just a single army, it's made up of soldiers pulled from conquered tribes. When the Legion takes over, enemies are given two choices: join them or die, usually by crucifixion. Once assimilated, strict discipline is drilled into every recruit, reinforcing an unbreakable chain of command that keeps them in line on the battlefield. But while they're excellent at storming enemy positions, even Legate Lanius admits that holding ground isn't exactly their strong suit. In the Legion, battlefield performance determines rank. Those who prove themselves in combat can rise to Decanus, which is a squad leader. Meanwhile, the highest-ranking veterans form the Legion's third wave in battle, acting as a rear guard and scavenging better weapons from fallen enemies. But brutality is a core part of their tactics. Legionaries have been known to use children as traps and torture prisoners within sight of NCR forces to break their morale. Colonel Cassandra Moore even compares their training to that of NCR's elite Rangers. But unlike the Rangers, Legionaries aren't taught to think for themselves. Their loyalty is absolute, and in extreme cases, disobedience can lead to decimation, where 1/10 of a unit is beaten to death by the other 9/10 as a punishment.
At a glance, Legionnaires are instantly recognizable. They wear armor made of scavenged materials, often reinforced with metal plates, animal hides, and even salvaged sports gear. Unlike the NCR's standardized military uniforms, the Legion's look is raw, rugged, and emphasizing strength over uniformity. Many Legion soldiers wear red tunics, inspired by the colors of Roman legionnaires, and they often have pieces of football or baseball gear repurposed into armor, because in the wasteland, you make do with what you've got. Higher ranking members, like the Centurions, wear more elaborate armor, sometimes incorporating trophies from fallen enemies. And then there's Legate Lanius. His armor is a terrifying, almost mythical sight. He wears a massive spiked helmet and heavy reinforced plating that makes him look less like a man and more like an unstoppable force. When it comes to weapons, the Legion takes a completely different approach from the NCR or Brotherhood of Steel. While most factions rely on high-tech firearms, energy weapons, or advanced combat tactics, the Legion leans into the fear tactic that they use against their enemies. They favor melee weapons, machetes, spears, and knives, because in Caesar's eyes, true warriors fight up close. Guns are used, but they're not as common as they are in other factions. When they do use firearms, it's usually simple weapons like lever-action rifles, revolvers, or 9mm pistols. Nothing too fancy, just reliable tools for killing. Then there's their signature weapon, the Machete Gladius. Inspired by the Roman gladius, it's a short, brutal blade designed for quick, devastating attacks. It embodies everything the Legion stands for: efficient, deadly, and straight to the point.
The Legion's command structure is just as ruthless. The Vexillarius carries the Legion's flag into battle, while the Frumentarii handle infiltration, espionage, and reconnaissance. Caesar's personal bodyguards, the Praetorians, are handpicked through brutal fights to the death. Even couriers play a hidden role. Ulysses claims that Caesar has ordered his Legion couriers not to kill other couriers because many of them are actually undercover Frumentarii. All of this helped the Legion grow into an empire, but it doesn't mean they only deal with their own. Not everyone sees the Legion as pure evil. Some traders actually prefer doing business in their territory. Take Dale Barton, for example. He frequently trades in Legion-controlled lands, and for good reason. With the Legion's iron grip on the region, he doesn't have to worry about hiring guards or paying taxes. Raiders and wasteland creatures practically wiped out. The Legion's brutal methods may be horrifying, but they're undeniably effective at keeping the roads safe. Even Cass, who's not a fan of the Legion, admits that life as a caravaneer would be way easier if the Legion ran the roads instead of the NCR. In her eyes, if they could offer the same level of security to towns as they do to trade routes, more settlements might be tempted to surrender willingly. But not everything is welcome in Legion lands. They have a strict no-tolerance policy when it comes to drugs and alcohol. Anyone caught trading them faces harsh punishment. The Legion doesn't just rule through force, they control every aspect of life, down to what people are allowed to buy and sell. Another interesting thing that you might have noticed is that the Legion doesn't really pronounce Latin words like you'd expect, like Caesar and Kaiser.
You must enter Kaiser's tent alone. Anyone else must remain outside.
Josh Sawyer, project director for New Vegas, says, pronunciation of Latin in the game is based on classical, not ecclesiastic rules of pronunciation. While it is difficult for us to know how Latin was actually pronounced in the time of Julius Caesar, classical pronunciation assumes that the presence or absence of certain letter-sound combinations in the surviving languages of Romanized cultures can inform our understanding. Anywho, generally speaking, if you find an academic textbook on Latin pronunciation these days, it's going to follow the classical rules. If you're taught Latin through your local church, you may very well learn that Italianate ecclesiastic rules. Caesar learned from academic textbooks, so he passed on that tradition. This is why we hear them say certain things the way they do. I thought it was an interesting point to bring up because I was also confused when I first heard Legion soldiers state his name.
I feel like we now have a good understanding of what the Legion is, but let's get into the meat and potatoes, the war for the Mojave and Hoover Dam. After witnessing the corruption and infighting within the NCR, Caesar decided to build something completely different. He modeled the Legion after Imperial Rome, believing that its success came from everyone working toward a single goal, the strength of the empire as a whole. In his version of Pax Romana, the individual has no value beyond their service to the state, and he's convinced that the NCR will eventually collapse under the weight of its own selfishness. To his followers, Caesar isn't just a leader, he's practically divine. They believe he has the right to rule because he's a son of Mars, the god of war. And to make sure that belief sticks, children born under Legion rule are indoctrinated from an early age. His rule is absolute. He's outlawed drugs and alcohol,
Kaiser strictly forbids the use of chems and alcohol,
declared women inferior to men, and made homosexuality punishable by death. The Legion's growing power didn't go unnoticed. Back in 2271, its presence pushed the Desert Rangers of Nevada to sign the Ranger Unification Treaty, officially joining the NCR's forces to stand against what they saw as the Legion's tyranny. But that didn't stop Caesar's expansion. By 2277, the Legion had pushed west into the Mojave, setting up a major base at Fortification Hill, overlooking Lake Mead and the Colorado River. At its peak, the Legion controlled vast territories, stretching across former New Mexico, Arizona, and parts of Colorado and Utah. They had already conquered or assimilated 87 tribes, but Caesar wanted more. He openly admitted that while his lands had cities, none compared to Vegas. Conquering it wasn't just about taking territory, it was about completing his vision. With Vegas under his control, he would finally have his Rome, transforming the Legion from a nomadic war machine into a permanent empire. For him, it wasn't just about ruling the wasteland, it was about cementing his legacy forever.
The first Battle of Hoover Dam was a major clash between Caesar's Legion and the New California Republic, a brutal fight for control over one of the most strategic locations in the Mojave. It all went down in 2277. The NCR, led by Chief Hanlon and General Lee Oliver, had fortified their positions at Hoover Dam. They had 1st Recon, Bravo Company, and NCR troopers at the ready, while the Legion under the command of Malpais Leggett launched a full-scale attack. The goal? Take the dam and secure control of the Colorado River. But before the battle even started, the NCR was at a disadvantage. Intense windstorms in the Divide delayed their reinforcements and supply lines, weakening their position. The Legion saw this as their moment to strike, pushing forward with elite warriors to break the NCR's hold. At first, things looked bad for the NCR, so they made a calculated retreat west into Boulder City. But this wasn't just a retreat, it was a trap. As they fell back, 1st Recon and the NCR Rangers picked off the Legion's veteran fighters from long range, forcing the Malpais Leggett to order his best troops to charge forward in pursuit. What the Legion didn't realize was the entire route into Boulder City had been rigged with explosives. The moment they entered, the NCR detonated the charges, causing massive casualties and crippling the Legion's elite forces. The survivors barely had time to regroup before General Oliver launched a counterattack, smashing what was left of the Legion's army and forcing them into full retreat. The battle ended in total defeat for the Legion. The legate had underestimated the NCR's tactics, and his failure to capture Hoover Dam had led to his downfall. Literally. As punishment for his loss, Caesar had him burned alive, erasing his name from history. The defeat at Hoover Dam wouldn't stop the Legion, but it was a major setback, one that Caesar wouldn't forget as he prepared for the next battle.
Before the first battle of Hoover Dam, Caesar's Legion was doing everything it could to choke off the NCR supply into the Mojave. Two major roads ran through the settlements of Hopeville and Ashton, key routes that kept NCR forces supplied and reinforced. The Legion knew they couldn't allow that to continue, so they moved in to cut off the region. What happened next was catastrophic. Somewhere in the chaos, an underground nuclear detonation was triggered, wiping both settlements off the map. The explosion turned the entire area into a hellish wasteland, making it nearly impossible to cross. Both the NCR and the Legion suffered heavy casualties, but the ones who didn't die outright were left twisted and broken by the radiation, becoming the marked men, ghoul-like remnants of both armies, forever trapped in the nightmare of the Divide. While the Legion technically succeeded in blocking the NCR's access to the region, the destruction had long-term consequences. With the Divide now impassable, the NCR struggled to get supplies where they needed to go. This heavily weakened their position, making it harder to capitalize on their victory at Hoover Dam. But for the Legion, this disaster might have actually been their saving grace. The Malpais legate, who should have been executed after his humiliating defeat at the dam, managed to survive. Because of that, the Legion was able to hold together and persist in the aftermath of the battle. The Divide wasn't just a battlefield, it became a graveyard of both factions, forever scarred by the mistakes of the past. The Legion has never been shy about using ruthless tactics, and the way they took over Camp Searchlight proves just how far they are willing to go. Legion operatives managed to get their hands on radioactive waste from San Onofre and opened the containers inside the camp's firehouse. The result? The entire area was wiped out, turning the once bustling NCR outpost to a contaminated ghost town. But for the Legion, this wasn't just an attack, it was a strategic move. With the NCR forces crippled, they were able to establish their own foothold in the region at Cottonwood Cove. With that victory secured, Caesar gave his next order: drive the NCR out of the east side of the Colorado River. This led to the battles of Willow Beach and Arizona Spillway, brutal clashes where the Legion pushed hard against the NCR forces. And while the NCR continued to fight back, Chief Hanlon himself admitted the cost was staggering. The Republic was losing over 1,000 troopers every single year.
The Legion's war against the NCR wasn't just about overwhelming them in a single battle. It was about grinding them down, bleeding them dry, and making sure that in the end, only one power remained standing. While Fortification Hill serves as the Legion's main base, their control extends far beyond it. They've secured several key locations across the Mojave, including Cottonwood Cove, Camp Nelson, the Tacatacup Mine, and the recently conquered town of Nipton. Each of these locations strengthens their hold on the region, acting as outposts for their forces and staging grounds for future operations. At some point in the Courier's journey, after they step out of the Lucky 38, they'll get an unexpected visit. Either Vulpes Inculta, one of Caesar's top men, or Ilario, who will approach them with an invitation to the fort. Once there, Caesar himself gives the Courier a mission: enter an underground bunker and destroy whatever's inside. But that's not the only task he has in mind. Caesar also wants Mr. House dead, believing that removing him is a crucial step in securing control over New Vegas. On top of that, he enlists the Courier's help in forging alliances with the Boomers and the White Glove Society, two factions that could tip the balance in the coming war. Whether the Courier chooses to follow Caesar's orders or turn against him is entirely up to them. But either way, their decisions will shape the future of the Mojave.
The Mojave campaign all comes down to one final battle, the Second Battle of Hoover Dam. And in the end, the fate of the entire region hinges on the decisions of one person: you. If you side with the NCR, the Republic emerges victorious. They secure Hoover Dam, the Strip, Freeside, and even Fortification Hill, solidifying their control over the Mojave. It's a major win for the NCR, but whether they can actually hold on to their new territory in the long run is another question entirely. If you fight for Caesar's Legion, the opposite happens. The Legion crushes the NCR at Hoover Dam and expands its empire all the way to the Mojave outpost. With the region under their control, Legate Lanius wastes no time declaring his next goal, pushing west to conquer California. If left unchecked, the Legion's war machine won't stop until everything is under their banner. But there's also a third path. If you back Mr. House or team up with Yes Man, the war is stopped in its tracks. While the NCR initially defeats the Legion at the dam, it doesn't last long. House's upgraded Securitron army storms Fortification Hill, wiping out the Legion's presence. Then, with a show of overwhelming force, the Securitrons eject the NCR from the Mojave completely. Depending on how you handle General Oliver, this withdrawal can either be a violent massacre or a surprisingly peaceful retreat.
No matter what, the Courier's choices decide who will rule, and who will be left in the dust. And I have no doubt we will actually get the answer to this outcome in the next season of the Fallout TV show, which looks to be taking place in New Vegas. And yes, it is canon. Maybe they'll keep it rather vague who ultimately won, but I don't even know if that would be possible with the Legion. They would be everywhere if they win. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Who do you guys think won the Battle of Hoover Dam in the end? What faction do you want us to cover next? And don't worry, Joshua Graham will get his time in the sun on our channel. But we needed to focus on the faction instead of the individual characters. Make sure you like and subscribe for more Fallout content in the future. And remember guys, enjoyed time is never wasted time, and we'll see you in the next.